The first time he said it, he laughed. Loud, like it was just a harmless joke echoing off the employee break room walls. But everybody heard it and nobody corrected him. Broke grandma. Theo Pritchard, 28 years old, crisp polo shirt tucked into corporate slacks that cost more than my electric bill, stood next to the coffee pot and smirked when he let it fly. "She's still workin'? Ain't she like 90? Man, that's a broke grandma if I've ever seen one." That room erupted, not with shock, not with laughter either, just the kind of soft chuckles people hide behind so they don't look uncomfortable. I was right there refilling the sugar, hands trembling a little, but my spine held straight. They think just 'cause you got on non-slip shoes and smell like ointment and iced down Motrin, you ain't got power left in you. They see vinyl coin purse and assume the mind behind it is empty. But I remember Theo that day real clear. He had that kind of confidence that comes from never having to scrape grease off a skillet before work. The kind of man raised on gotten, not earned. He looked at me in the mirror under the paper towel dispenser, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Just smiled like I was some artifact collecting dust in the office halls. I smiled back. "Good afternoon to you too, baby," I said soft. Then I went back to clean in the same break room I helped raise my kids through 3 waitressing jobs. They talked about diverse hiring in that place but forgot to mention dignity. I ain't say nothin' that day. I zipped up my blue cardigan, swept the crumbs from their catered training lunch, and walked home with my bag of clearance grapes from Walgreens and a bus transfer pass half crumpled in my coat pocket. But I watched. That's one thing they always forget about the quiet ones. We're always watching. The job was inside a downtown tech firm. High-rise, glass exteriors, rental plants in every hallway. The kind of place that put kombucha on tap and called it culture. I got hired through a contract agency for office maintenance. No name badge, just a job number and a clipboard with zones to cover by 3 p.m. I mopped their floors while they pitched million-dollar ideas, pushed carts while their junior execs whispered about budget cuts. They didn't know I graduated top of my class in 1968 before I gave up scholarships to feed my sister's baby and help raise my neighbor's boy when his mama passed. They didn't ask about how many people been housed 'cause of the checks that came through my hands before I even cashed them. I walked through that building like wallpaper, necessary but invisible. Except to Theo. He saw me. But not in the way that matters. He saw weakness, saw age, saw slow. He ain't see me. 6 days after the broke grandma moment, I saw him again. Loud, as always, saying something about crypto while scribbling his initials on the boardroom coffee flasks. I passed them as they rolled out. He made eye contact and snorted. "Still here? Thought they'd upgraded to robot cleaners by now." One of his friends laughed. Another looked real uncomfortable. I took a deep breath. "Still here," I said softly. "Just learning a few algorithms of my own." He laughed like he missed the point on purpose. "That's fine." I slipped my time card into the scanner and exited the back lobby without breaking pace. The mop handle in my hand felt heavier that day, but my pride? She stood 10 feet tall with heels on. That night I called Marcus, my eldest boy, still working in logistics and equity capital out west. Still don't visit like he should. I ain't told him what Theo said. Instead, I just asked him a single question. "Remember that startup y'all said was looking for legacy investors?" He paused. "Ma, you trying to get flashy now?" I smiled through that landline inflection. Not flashy. Just finished reading they updated pitch book. And I done sat in that boardroom long enough to know they don't know how they're breaking even. But I do. He laughed, long proud. "Ma, I'll send over the docs." What Theo didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been saving. I sold off a piece of land in Alabama my daddy left in a trust. It wasn't much, but I flipped ain't much into quite a bit over 12 years with a real estate tax attorney and some help from a former student I once taught in Sunday school. Ain't tell nobody. Not my kids, not even Joylene. Some things a woman gotta hold close until it's time to cash 'em in. 3 months later, I bought in. $250,000 stake, fully silent. Full vesting, no employer access, no performance reviews, no name on the system printer, just equity, building in silence. Marcus helped hide it through 2 layers of shell companies and a protective trust. By then, Theo was busy getting publicly disciplined for saying something inappropriate to a female intern. I saw the notice on an HR email I swept under the door. He was trying to roll out some branded app no one could explain. I smiled to myself. watched it all unfold while I stocked vanilla creamers and sprayed down their chairs before quarterly board meetings. And then it happened. That day was clear as glass. March. Windy. I remember because my scarf almost floated off when I stepped out the lift. I was wearing a full cream wool coat, silk scarf tucked, lips lined, earrings speaking soft elegance. Marcus stepped out beside me, suited in navy and silence. The receptionist waved him through. He motioned to me. "This is our senior proxy." She blinked. "Oh, of course, right this way." The company had been acquired quietly by a larger investment group. I was on the acquisition team, a careful, faceless name attached to a better strategy for reorganization. There was one line in the internal memo they all missed. New ownership to phase out underperforming department heads post-acquisition. Guess who was listed number 3 by name? Theo Pritchard. He didn't know. Not until the reorg meeting. Not until I walked into that boardroom with silent steps and calm breath. Not until he pulled the chair for the investor observer and turned around. And saw me. He blinked twice, lips parted. Looked confused, then embarrassed, then furious. I smiled. "Afternoon, baby." He didn't say a word. HR began the presentation. 15 minutes later, he was released from contract. And I kept writing notes. After the meeting ended, Theo stood in the hallway, pale and stiff, watching the glass door. "You," he finally said, "I've been watching you longer than you've been adding numbers wrong on your own whiteboard, sweetheart." He shook his head. "How?" "Same way you missed what matters," I said, "by never really looking." I walked past him slow, heels clicking like punctuation. He looked down one last time, at my handbag. It was Prada, black, real, classic. "See you around, Theo," I said. He didn't reply. He never did again. I didn't always plan to make money. I planned to survive. Wasn't born in no mansion. Born in a one-fan shotgun house with flypaper hanging next to the good book. My mama was a midwife, part-time snack cake hustler. My daddy, before he passed, was a deacon who prayed with a hammer in his hand. Hard work was the sermon, and I learned it young. I used to think legacy came from what you left to your children, but sometimes it's what you keep from them that proves who they became. I started putting away cash in a Crown Royal bag under the mattress back when Joylene was still in pull-ups and Marcus was drawing spaceships on the walls. Didn't trust banks back then. Saw too many cousins lose money in deposit box schemes. So I learned, read every book from the downtown library. Compound interest, tax liens, land flipping, before land flipping was YouTube viral. Started small. Bought a lot no bigger than a gas station bathroom. Let it sit. Grew okra on it the first 3 years, then sold it to a man who thought he'd cheated me for $11,000. He hadn't. I kept going with that same slow patience I used to braise neck bones. Money takes seasoning. I never mentioned it to my kids, not once. Not when they got their scholarships, not when they brought home partners that looked down at me in my nurse's shoes, not even when Tatia walked into my house and started replacing my forks with bamboo ones to match the energy. "Old folks don't need to know all that," she once told Marcus, quiet. I heard her. I heard everything. By the time I hit 60, I had more in that brokerage account than any teacher I ever worked beside. But nobody knew, because I still wore my $6 flats from the outlet mall, still used rotary phones, still packed a bologna sandwich with sliced apples and reused foil. Sometimes Marcus would try and gift me things. "Ma, you don't have to live like you poor," he told me. I smiled. "You don't have to act like money can fix guilt either." "He ain't like that." But he heard it, and slowly I saw distance grow like mold between me and my own boy. He visited less, called only when free, and I let it hurt just enough to remember the ache. A mother don't ever stop carrying them. Even when they want to put you down like baggage they too grown to hold anymore. One winter, about 5 years before the Theo incident, I got sick. Just bronchitis, but deep enough to spook Marcus. He flew in unannounced, told Joylene to call a home care evaluation behind my back, brought in an elderly life planner with shiny brochures. I sat on the edge of my own bed while he unpacked worry like it wasn't disrespect hid in a cardigan. "I just want you safe, Ma. I've been safe since your daddy passed, and I held this whole lot down on one income," I said. "Being stubborn ain't strength, Ma. And being overly helpful ain't love. Sometimes it's just fear dressed up in action." He sat quiet then. Didn't say sorry. just rubbed his knees like he wanted to fix a thing he couldn't admit he broke. That day I printed out every real estate parcel I had equity in and dropped it in a folder titled, "For When They Think I'm Frail." I laminated 2 trust account ledgers, stapled beneficiaries across different fallback firms, and kept it all in the back of my mop closet. Let them all believe I was small. That was the plan. If people don't expect much from you, they never prepare for you. And my preparation had already begun. 3 years later, I went to work for that downtown firm. Not because I needed it. I missed structure. I missed waking up for something bigger than silence and Judge Judy reruns. Plus, the opportunity showed up from a friend at church saying, they need a floor supervisor. I took it, blessed it, wore my orthopedic shoes and braided my edges with grace. Nobody asked about my portfolio. Nobody asked who I was outside the mop handle. And I liked it that way. Until Theo. That's the thing about ego. It don't show up all at once. It creeps in like lime around drains or roaches in cold cabinets. Theo looked at me like a coffee spill with no backstory. He pitied me without checking for truth. And when he laughed in that break room, what he didn't understand was that I had already hired the people who'd draft his severance. The day before the buyout, I called Aunt Shine. She stay talking, knows everything about everybody from county clerks to midwives who used to smuggle gold teeth during the 60s. They told him not to touch the intern. Little fool talking awful in front of HR reps. He gonna crash faster than a Braxton cookout fryer, she said. You always got the tea, I told her, laughing. Nah, baby, I got the receipts. They just ain't posted yet. She paused. Let him call you broke grandma. Just smile when it's time to pick what curtain his exit interview gets held behind. I chuckled. And that night, I lit a candle by the window. Thanked God for every little penny jar I ever said no to a milkshake for. 'Cause now it was about to flip full circle. I don't look down on poor folk. I'm from 'em. But too often, our own children see struggle as shame. So they throw it at your feet like it'll bounce 'em higher. Ma, don't wear that coat. It looks old. Ma, you can't keep filling notebook ledgers. Just use QuickBooks online. Ma, you need to stop hoarding pennies in jars. But these same mouths be begging when rent run late and credit tap out. And you know what? That's why I never told them a word. Visual note. At this point in the timeline, Ora Mae is in her early 60s. She wears a clean but simple navy blouse. She still calls the bank on a landline. She brings her own whiteout to work and irons her pants every Thursday before shift. She walks with a quiet power, but she is waiting to rise. When she finally retires, just before the company sells, she don't throw a party. She just returns her ID card, blesses the mop, and walks home in silence. That night, she checks her account and sees more zeros than she's ever admitted even to herself. All hard-earned, all hers. The storm's coming, and she is ready. March 17th. The floor smelled like lemon bleach and tension. All week, whispers had been crawling around the office like ants in sealed sugar. Buyout, investors, rumors of restructuring, new owners who didn't like excess. Some of the mid-level managers walked faster, smiling tighter. Theo? He was louder than ever. Said he had a meeting lined up with a senior recruiter, just in case. Said if the company folded, he'd be fine because he already had offers on the table. Said ain't no way they'd get rid of him. He ran this department. Can't touch me, he bragged over a microwaved bowl of quinoa. And somewhere, God nodded and turned the volume up on irony. Across town, Ora Mae got out of a black sedan with a professional folder in one hand and silence in her pocket. Her coat was long, cream wool. Her scarf, a soft green silk, folded twice. No badge, no rolling trash can. Just presence. Just history wearing perfume and leather gloves. Marcus opened the building's front door before the receptionist even stood up. This is our primary legacy equity holder, he said. She blinked. Of course, right this way. The building had been acquired by a southern-based equity trust with diversified stakes in quiet ventures, laundromats, senior living, software hubs, and now this. Ora Mae's name wasn't on the website, but it was already on everything that mattered. 3 months prior, the majority stock quietly shifted to structured trusts. Ora Mae owned through structure, not spotlight. She sat in the back of the executive boardroom as attendees filed in like sheep dressed for slaughter. The glass walls caught her reflection. She didn't smile. Theo strutted in late, of course, talking on the phone, adjusting his cufflinks, complimenting everyone but meaning none of it. "Who's the new—" he started, seeing her in the back corner. But the room went quiet as the HR director tapped her laptop. "Welcome, everyone. We'll begin today's transition review. As of this morning, full ownership has transferred to our senior capital partners." She nodded toward Ora Mae. 10 people turned. 6 stood still. 2 whispered. And one man's soul tried to crawl out through his tie. Theo turned pale. "Wait!" He looked again. It wasn't just some admin. It wasn't that old lady from the hallway. It was her. It was the woman he called Broke Grandma. The very same. Who now sat across the room holding the pen marking which department heads would remain by month's end. He said nothing for the next 24 minutes. But his eyes? They asked every single question pride had never let his mouth form. Ora Mae didn't gloat. She didn't even blink twice. Just adjusted her notes and nodded as HR reviewed restructuring protocol. And when Theo was called outside for private discussion, she finally raised her eyebrow. The door shut behind him with the force of a life unraveling. "Was that really her?" someone whispered. "How?" Marcus took a sip of his coffee. "Because she pays attention," he said. 2 days later, Theo's badge didn't scan. A line formed behind him at security. He called corporate, sent 3 emails, tried to relog in. Nothing. He finally came to the front desk and asked for someone senior to clarify the situation. The woman behind the glass pointed down the hallway. He walked, slower this time. When he opened the meeting room door, Ora Mae was sitting across from the legal team with a manila folder thick with paper. He paused in the doorway like a child in trouble with no idea how deep it ran. She didn't motion for him to sit. She simply said, "Mr. Pritchard." He swallowed. "I just didn't realize." "You saw a slow woman with comfortable shoes and an old mop cart," she said softly. "Not a woman who'd already owned half your equipment before your name was typed into payroll." He nodded once, breathing tight. "I didn't mean any harm. I was just kiddin' that day." "That ain't kiddin', baby. That's bruised ego attempting dominance, and mine's healed already." The legal rep slid a copy of the severance agreement over. Standard package, clean termination, recommendation clause suspended. He looked down and saw her initials on the bottom right corner. OMJ, Ora Mae Jerome. He looked up. Is there anything I can really say?" "Yes," she said quietly. "Thank you." He blinked in confusion. "Thank?" "Because now you have the time to finally learn something about what real wealth looks like." Caleb wrote about it in an essay later for school. Said, "My grandma got called broke. But what they didn't know is she bent power. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the floor underneath her feet." And Anya? When she asked what happened to Mr. Mean Man, Ora Mae smiled. He got a new opportunity. The company went on. Ora Mae stayed silent. Still rode the same car. Still shopped with coupons. But now, she owned full stake in 3 subsidiaries. Her bank statements looked nothing like her grocery list. And whenever someone asked why she never told anyone, she said, "Because the loud ones only prepare when they hear noise. But the quiet ones wait until they own the room, then change the locks." It didn't take long for word to leak. 3 days after Theo quietly disappeared from his department, 2 executives held a closed-door call in the HR hallway, and 1 receptionist held their breath just long enough to hear the phrase, "She's one of the new owners. No one even knew her name." That's all it took. By the end of the week, Ora Mae's name stopped meaning cleaning schedules and started meaning questions. How? When? Her? The woman who once laid out forks for their galas now skipped straight into their money meetings. Marcus called first, this time just to talk. No, "Hey Ma," attached to a transfer form, or "Can you watch Ania real quick while we run errands?" He started with, "I know I ain't been around like I should have." And she let him say it, because a mother who fights too much for attention becomes a shadow by default. He told her about feeling ashamed. Said seeing his mama still scrubbing offices and flipping laundry while other men's mothers posted condo views on social media made him feel less than. "I imagined you had nothing," he admitted, "and I let that image make me resent it all." She listened, then smiled, just a little. "Funny thing about imagining," she said. "It only prints 1 layer. Truth's got 12. He said nothing. Just let the silence fold them back into being family again. 2 weeks passed. Spring came, and then Joyline knocked on her front door, wearing a sand-colored pantsuit and surprising humility. But humility often wears perfume. "I heard about the investment group," she said. Ain't news no more, Ora Mae replied. Joylene laughed, the kind that meant she didn't mean to. They say you quiet rich. I like quiet. I bet you do. It stayed uncomfortable long enough for both to feel it deep. This wasn't joy. This was need in heels. Joylene got to the point without asking how she was. I'm starting my own coaching business, corporate diversity training, and I could really use, starter capital. Ora Mae didn't blink. You want me to be your pitch? I want you to be my investor. For something that didn't believe in me when I walked through as a janitor? Joylene hesitated. It ain't about belief, it's about capital and impact. You've got power now. Put it where it counts. Ora Mae picked up her tea. I've been putting it where it counts. You just didn't see the numbers. Joylene's lip flinched, but only for a moment. I'm not asking for a handout, just a loan or stake. You're rich now. Ora Mae looked up slowly. Moses split seas with a staff, not a profit margin. Don't come into my house with capital talk before you lay out care. That's when Joylene said the line that cracked 2 decades open. You've always made people prove they loved you, Mama. And Ora Mae smiled again. Love should hold receipts, especially when you're the only one bringing dinner to the table. Joylene breathed heavy but accepted defeat. She left empty-handed, but with her self-reflection folding under her heels. Ora Mae didn't cry after. She just folded the tea towel, washed her cup, and opened her planning journal. She had bigger decisions now. It wasn't until Mr. Harmon came by the next morning that she realized something shifted in the outside world too. He stood at the porch, hat in hand. You ever eat at Chen's Bistro? Ora Mae blinked. Not since I took Marcus there for his prom dinner. He chuckled. Well, they got your picture on the wall. My what? Some newsletter picked your story up. Quiet lady becomes equity ghost at billion-dollar firm. You trending, Miss Ora. Ora Mae sighed. And here I was enjoying anonymity like a front porch sunrise. You still got sunrise. Just got folks reading about you while you're drinking it. The church ladies had questions before Bible study. Her old company emailed to feature her in the diversity guide. And local news wanted just a short commentary column on being underestimated. She declined all of them. Not because she wasn't proud, but because moths are born for spotlight. Matriarchs? They bake in the dark and shine through suns and spines. Caleb came over that afternoon. Didn't ask for anything. Just sat on the carpet, helped put up curtain rods she'd been meaning to fix since fall. You feel different, he said. How? Like you ain't waiting to be small for nobody anymore. She nodded. I didn't stop being small. The world just got scaled right. The next month, someone tried to offer her a buyout. She laughed hard enough to scare the birds. Then she walked out onto her porch in a velvet wrap that shimmered gold against her cocoa skin and old cedar panels. She sipped tea, listened to herself breathe. No planning, no hiding, no pretending. Just power worn soft again. Because Ora Mae never needed to shout. When the world hears a woman roar in silence, that's when power gets rewritten. Porch swings have a memory. You sit down and the wood knows whether you arrive happy or healing. Today mine was warm. Sun had tucked in just low enough to sift through the wind chimes. Sweet mint blew across the roses I watered that morning with a long sigh and a short song. I sat there, in linen, not polyester, in peace, not pretending. There was no check to write, no badge to scan, no face to prove wrong. Just me, Ora Mae, and the creak of well-earned stillness. I thought about all the labels I'd been given. Grandma, janitor, filler, burden, broke. That one stuck the longest, not because it was true, but because somewhere along the way, it felt true. And the most dangerous lies are the ones you start helping carry. But baby, let me tell you something. If somebody ever tells you what you're worth based on your clothes, your age, or your silence, smile. That means they just disqualified themselves from ever sharing your table. Let them choke on assumptions. Me? I eat quiet feasts now, with every woman I've ever been sitting across from me. The Ora Mae who poured grease into coffee cans so it wouldn't clog the sink. The Ora Mae who shook while depositing her rent, praying the check from the diner hit. The Ora Mae who watched her grown children forget how she remembers. They're all here, and they all survived. I didn't buy a yacht with my first payout. I paid off somebody else's debt and lit a candle by my joy. Watched Marcus come home more often, without needs stitched into his sentences. Watched Ania look at me like I was more than somebody who picks her up from Sunday school. I was a lesson now, a lighthouse. Joylene still doesn't call much, but she sent a card last week. It said, Still learning how to love deep. Thank you for keeping the porch light on. I kept it under my Bible. Some grudges are slow-breathing trees, but that don't mean they don't soften eventually. And as for Theo, someone asked me if I ever regretted not dragging him louder. I smiled, said, "When you own the building, you ain't gotta shout through the walls." Last Sunday, a young girl from church came up to me. She said, "Mama May, my boss won't even look me in the eye when I speak." I put my hand on her wrist and said, "Then baby, spend less time trying to make him see you, and more time making sure he feels it when you leave the room." See, power don't always have to be revenge. Sometimes it's just no longer needing room temperature approval from folks who bring lukewarm respect. This house used to hold echoes. Now it holds legacy. Not just the portfolio or the restructured trust fund, not the keys to the junior board I invisibly steer, but legacy in the confidence growing in the bones of my family, in the line that says, "Don't play with Miss Ora Mae," in the silence that spreads when they ask, "Wait, she was the investor?" Yes, I was. If you ever forget anything about me, remember this. I never stopped working because I didn't care about my worth. I kept working so I could protect it, grow it, and wear it later like satin armor. Sometimes, dignity and money gotta take opposite elevators before they meet back up in the penthouse. But baby, I made it, wearing a wrap dress, on a porch I still own, with a cup that never runs dry again. So tell me, if someone ever looked you in your face and called you broke, small, done, but you knew deep in your bones they'd regret it one day, would you tell them? Or would you wait until the keys were already in your hand? Let me know down below. Let's talk a little here on Tales of Ora Mae.